Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the next episode of the Writers Podcast. I have with me today special guest, Kalee Boisvert. Did I say that right? Yeah,
Yeah,
that's French, right?
it's French, correct.
Yes, okay, I thought so. And Kaylee's written a recent book that's just released yesterday, correct?
Yes.
Today's July the 11th, and so her book
Yeah.
is out now, and it's called "Make Money Your Thing: Ditch the Shame, and Design Your Dream Life." So we'll get into all that. But Kalee, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, where you are, and what you do, and how you got up to the point where we started to write this book?
Yeah, that's a long story. No, I'll
Okay.
be brief though. I'll summarize it.
That's okay.
First, thank you so much for having me on the show. I really appreciate it. So a little bit about my journey. So I wrote this book, Make Money Your Thing. Like you said, it just came out for release yesterday. So I'm still like very excited, pumped. You know,
Congratulations.
it's out there in the world. Yay. Like now I get to actually, hear what people think and people are getting to read it. So that's so
Right.
fun. But for me, it kind of all started like it dates back to my childhood. So growing up, I was raised by a single mom. And so money was really a source of like stress and struggle, is what I saw in my childhood. So
Sounds
my mom
familiar.
worked really hard. Yeah, yeah. And it's
Yeah.
very, I think a lot of people can relate to that. But
Yeah, for
it,
sure.
she worked really hard as a single parent. At some point, she was working multiple jobs and things like that. So really, seeing that though, and kind of witnessing, well, not everyone though was kind of plagued with that same money scarcity. So I had
Hmm.
friends and they had all the toys and the things I wanted, and I'm like, huh. So that, that was interesting to me, because it was
Hmm.
like realizing that, okay, it's, it's not the whole, like it's not the same for everyone.
Right.
And but also seeing that and seeing what she went through, I realized early on that I would, I wanted to do something to help or to fix it. And as a
Hmm.
child, you couldn't, you're kind of helpless to being able
Right.
to do anything. But fast forward, again, I was very like, I was a very introvert, observant type person though. And I was seeing again, like other kids having the things and whatnot. So
Hmm.
I became really like fascinated with the concept of money. And so that kind of stuck with me all through sort of my like younger years. And what was interesting, when I asked my mom, there was one thing I asked her for. It was a Super Nintendo. I think I was probably asking for it over and over and over again, actually. And instead of the usual response, which was, no, we can't, you can't have that, we can't afford that. At that time, she had said, if you want one so badly, go buy it yourself. Like with your own
Mm.
money, save up and buy it. And I was like, what? It just like changed my whole perspective, because as a
Right.
child, I guess, your mind is just like, that's a no. And when
Right.
she said that, I was like, that's a yes. Like I can get it. I just have to get my own money. And so I, diligently saved, and I think it took me like close to a year. And I
Mm.
saved up and I bought that Super Nintendo. And I remember like the moment of like going into the store, grabbing it off the shelves, paying for it with my own money, like just
Mm.
how amazing it felt. Like I felt like I
Right.
was on top of the world. And
Right.
I was just like, that early experience and what that taught me was this whole, you can have big goals, and that's a big money goal for a child. I was like 8 or 9
Right.
at the time, and it was probably like over $100.
Hmm.
So you can have these big goals and you can achieve them. And when you do, it feels so good. So that was kind of the early beginnings for me. And then
Mm.
I kind of followed through that love of money and numbers I had into university, and I landed in the financial profession in
Mm.
like post degree.
Hmm.
And there it kind of came back again, that desire to really help and support women, because what I was seeing was that it's very male dominated, the industry. So it was,
Mm.
men talking about money, investing, stocks, and there wasn't a lot of women around. And at first the messaging I was getting was like, well, women aren't interested. But then I thought about it and I'm like, well, I'm a woman and I'm interested. So I'm like, there's something wrong here. Like that's not
Right.
true. Women are interested.
Yeah.
But we probably have to make it more interesting. Like again, the industry being like male dominated,
Hmm.
what that results in is it's almost like it's catered to men, it's designed for men, which again, it's fine. But again, then we also have to cater and design it for women too, to welcome them, to make them feel
Right.
comfortable, to say like, oh, I belong here too. I deserve to be in this conversation about my money and investing as well. So
Mm.
seeing that is like, that really like reignited that inside of me, whatever it was about how can I help women. Like all of a sudden
Right.
it was like, I remembered, wanting to help my mom, and
Hmm.
it was like, wow, I can actually do that. I can support women to feel good about their money. And that's what I did. And I built my business that way.
Mm.
And I love every moment of it. And I've been doing it for years. And that was where the idea for the book came, because I've always
Mm.
wanted to write a book. And, where has my whole like time and career been, focused on? And it's always been very
Hmm.
much in the financial industry. So I was like, well, that's the book I have to write. It's a book about money for women, like a book about like helping build this confidence and making women feel a little bit more comfortable when they
Hmm.
talk about things like money and investing. And so that was my inspiration for writing Make
Okay.
Money Your Thing. Yeah.
So uh, I'm a little surprised to hear that still that the market, financial market, is still male dominated, because I would have thought over the last, especially 20 years, there would have been a little more a leveling or evening out between the two genders in that respect, but
Yeah.
apparently not.
No, I think it's
Hmm.
just slow, unfortunately, to
Hmm.
catch up. So it
Okay.
it makes sense where this comes from. Like if we look back in time, I don't remember how many years ago, like 40, 50 some years ago, maybe more than 40, like 50 plus, let's say 50, 60. There was a time where like women weren't even allowed to have a credit card or have their own bank account or own property. So
Right.
this is still new, I guess, in the, if we look back in history, and it's like, when
Hmm.
have women really gained this financial independence? Unfortunately, it's still a new thing. And I think
Hmm.
that's it. It's lagging. But that being said, let's do what's in our control to help it catch up. Right. So
Right.
you're right. Like it shouldn't be that way. And it's not always, like, it's changing for sure. But there's still places where you see that it's like, I have stories from myself and from other women where they
Hmm.
talk about, and I share them in the book, I think, going to a bank and having conversations, like big money decisions, and feeling like they're talked down to, or that, their husband should be present in the conversation and whatnot as well.
Right.
And that's really hard to hear, because that's just not the reality anymore. Like, I'm a single mom. I am a financially independent woman. I would really, hate to be talked down to, or feel like,
Sure.
I'm not the
Yeah.
decision maker when it
Right.
comes to that. And that's, the women are still getting that in some ways. So we have to stop with these biases. Again, we
Hmm.
understand where they come from. It's
Sure.
still recent in the whole
Hmm.
scheme of things, but let's put like that conscious awareness where we're like, hey, let's get rid of these. And I think that's what I'm doing with this book. Like, I wrote the book for women. It doesn't mean men can't read the book,
That was
but
one of my
I
questions.
yeah, okay, good. No, of course, and men have read it, and I've gotten great feedback from men. But they
Hmm.
they also acknowledge that it is for women, and I think men can appreciate that, because they think of like their wives or their mothers or their
Hmm.
daughters, and of course they want them to feel like empowered and
Right.
confident and inspired when it comes to their financial lives. And this is a whole change where it's also historically like men feeling like the financial burden is always on them, like they're supposed to be the
Hmm.
breadwinner and
Yep.
quote unquote and all that. And this is good for everyone, because women being financially independent,
Hmm.
that benefits everyone, men
Right.
too. Like, we can decide that finances aren't just for men or for women, or their responsibility or women's responsibility. It's more of a joint effort, and both have to be involved, and both have to feel financially independent and empowered. So I
Hmm.
mean, this change, and the reason I'm writing this book for women, I think men can and I hope would get behind it too. Like, this is important for everyone, for
Hmm.
women to feel more confident and secure in their financial lives.
Okay. So you had this idea for this book, which is great. And I'm looking, or based on what you've told me, your education was focused on financial related courses.
Yeah.
Writing a book, is even a nonfiction book, is uh, quite a bit different than taking an accounting course, let's say. So How did you approach the book? Like you obviously have your hook that you were writing this for women, but how were you approaching this book to make it accessible to the average um, person out there, the average reader there, or somebody with um, a little financial experience, or somebody that has a lot of financial experience, or were you focusing on less experienced people, and what age groups were you focusing on for this book? Younger women or women approaching retirement? Like what's the spectrum of your book?
Yeah,
Sorry, there's
that's
a
a
lot of
great.
questions in there.
Yeah, there is, but it's great. Yeah, it's like the whole writing process. There's so much involved in that.
Yeah.
And you're right. So like the seed planted in me was, again, I was a single mom. I had
Hmm.
my daughter. She was about 6 years old at the time when I started writing this. And I thought of it as like, again, because I had so many years experience in the industry, I was helping women.
Hmm.
There's you're only can help so many people because you have only so much time in a day, like when you're
Right.
working one-on-one with people.
Yep.
But I thought to myself, like, what would I want my daughter to know? Like, so it's almost
Mm.
like I create, like, that was the seedling of like, I want to put together this book that would be like everything from what I've learned that I would want to like pass along to my daughter so
Okay.
she can feel like a financially independent woman. So when she grows up, like, this is what I would want her to know. So that was like the seedling planted of like, what is this about? What is the
Hmm.
mission with this? And then when I got to writing, very interesting process because, again, you're like you said, I'm a financial person. So, I'm
Hmm.
putting the jargon in and talking in the world of finances. And it was very textbook like at first, like the first
Right.
draft. When you're writing a book and write, like, you'll realize this is like authors and stuff, but your first version is like nothing like what it actually becomes, which is
Right.
very interesting to me. But that first version would probably have been a terrible textbook that no one would want to write.
Right.
But what it became was, again, that was at the mission, what I'd want my daughter to know. And also,
Hmm.
my underlying mission was I wanted it to like, so you kind of want to establish like a feeling. And I said,
Yep.
I wanted it to feel like you're talking about money with your girlfriends. Like,
Hmm.
that, like when you're having a conversation with a good friend and it's just like the guards down and you just feel like you can chat about anything, you're in a comfortable, safe space.
Hmm.
That's what I wanted the book to feel like for the readers. Like, you're having a conversation with someone you really trust and you've known forever, and it's easy and it's light and it's fun. And what's so cool is I got a review and it literally said, it feels like I'm having a conversation about money with my friend. And I'm like, what? Like,
Yeah,
that was exactly what I was trying to do.
that's
So,
good. Yeah,
yes, what the book
excellent.
started out. Pardon?
Right. Excellent. Sorry, that was my
Yeah.
phone.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So what the book started as and what it became, I think, as an author, like the feeling or what you're trying to get across, but to get that done in words is really like quite a challenging process. And I had a book coach that I worked with along the way that would kind of like review what I had written and pull that out of me. Like, she would say, like,
Mm.
this is really boring. Can you create like a story to pull the
Right.
reader in? Okay, then I have the story, and then it's like, well, you need more details, right? It's that like show don't tell. I was
Hmm.
like, all these are new concepts to me.
Right.
I, of course, like, seasoned writers and authors know this, but for me it was like very new. But yes, that's what it became, is that I knew the feeling, I knew at its core what I wanted it to be. And so it's like many versions of it to become that, but it did. And that's what's so neat about the writing process too, is like what it morphs into.
Right.
And
Right.
yeah, like, I can't describe it, but it just happens so naturally as you're doing like the
Hmm.
edits, or the sort of drafts is like part of the writing process, the
Right.
drafts of like how
Yeah.
many different versions it becomes.
Hmm. So how many drafts did you end up doing?
Probably, it's hard to tell because I would do like certain chapters. The good thing with
Right.
nonfiction is you can kind of break it up by chapters. Probably the
Yeah.
fiction book, it's very clear on how you have to rewrite, do drafts throughout. But
Right.
I would say like several times, depending on the chapters. Some I nailed them a little bit quicker than others.
Okay.
As I was like later in the process, I'm like, I'm getting this.
Right.
I got this.
So
Yeah.
how did you structure your book then? Do you start out like with these are the basics and you build upon those? Is that the approach
Yeah,
you took?
that's an interesting question too, because that was a big edit as well from a structural editor. So a
Mm.
publisher took on my book, but then I got to work with a structural editor and they're like,
Ah.
yeah, this is no, you need to rearrange this. So
Mm.
now like what it became again, it was like a puzzle and I just had to like rearrange the pieces. So
Right.
how I envisioned it is it's like a journey, so it takes the reader on a journey of
Mhm.
building confidence about money. So how the journey starts is with the inner work, some of the like money beliefs that we're holding on to, the foundational stuff that seems a little bit like woo woo to some. I feel like I have a lot backing it up, so I think anyone can kind of be okay with what I do and stuff, because I know some
Mhm.
people it's just like, this is a little too outlandish for me or whatnot, but
Right.
it's going into the foundational about like, again, from my childhood, what I was carrying forward from
Mhm.
growing up poor, having the money beliefs of like, money is scarce, never have enough, things like that. How can we change those, the money mindset piece? And
Mhm.
that really forms the foundation. So we do the inner work first, that's part one. And then it's about building confidence. So it's like
Okay.
creating that confidence by doing things like knowing your numbers, like what is your net worth? What is your, if you look through kind of income and expenses, what does that look like? And it takes the reader through kind of step by step how they can do that for themselves. It
Mhm.
talks about investing and how we can make investing less scary. And then it moves the reader on to like really like embedding that confidence to make it essentially like unshakable. So moving forward,
Mhm.
things are going to happen, right? There's going to
Right.
be challenges or like moments where you're like, oh, should I do this? Or, I read the money book, but now I'm not feeling so confident or whatever. So
Right.
it's that, how do we now like instill the confidence so going forward you keep feeling that way? And it's about doing things like spending more time with your money. And I talk to
Mm.
the readers about that, about how we spend so much time earning money, we don't give enough time to give back to our money, to like actually put some like dedicated time aside. And I have a whole chapter about money dates, and it talks about how readers can spend that dedicated time with their money and exploring different topics. So I give ideas on essentially
Mm.
how we can make this confidence that we're building, so building up that money muscle and then making it unshakable, so you're like
Okay.
ready to go, and by the end of the book hopefully you are saying money is my thing. So at
Okay.
the start maybe it's like avoidance, overwhelm, you're saying things like not good with math, not good with numbers. By the end of it, I want the reader to be saying money is my thing. I'm feeling
Okay.
inspired to take action.
Okay. So, can you give me an example of a money date?
Yeah. What does this
I'm
look
curious.
like? Yeah. You're like, how do I take my money on a date? You like go to
Yeah.
the bank,
Like,
get a whole
do
bunch
I
of
throw it in
dollar
the
bills
bathtub and
out.
dive in or something? Or
Yes, yeah, that does sound glamorous, right? Like a Scrooge McDuck thing I
yeah,
picture, where he's
exactly.
like jumping into a pile of money.
Yeah.
No, but it's just that dedicated time. So it's about scheduling it, putting it in your calendar. So you're not going to stand up your money, right? No standing
Oh,
up that
okay.
date. And
Okay.
then, a money date could be getting to know like your numbers, having money awareness. So you
Oh, okay.
dedicate like an hour to going through last month and looking at your expenses and breaking down like the categories of where you're spending the money, like your
Mm.
your money, where's it going? 'Cause so many people say things like, I have no idea where all my money goes. Well, there's an easy solution. Like you can
Right.
figure it out. It's all there in the transactions, a little bit of detective work. And, there's an answer for that. So that could be a money date, like getting to
Okay.
know your numbers.
Mm.
Another idea would be like a money date about like protecting yourself for the unknown. So maybe it's going through and seeing, okay, who do I have designated as my beneficiaries? Do I need to update that? Do I have a
Mm.
will in place? Do I need to get one done? Things
Right.
like that. So there's different ideas. It's essentially just like tackling a money topic
Oh, okay.
one thing at a time.
Okay. Very good. What was the time period that you wrote this book over? Like, um, from the from the time that you had the idea to the first time you sat down and said, "Okay, I'm going to actually start. I'm going to do this."
Yeah, I pretty much got to writing like right when I decided to. It was when COVID hit. I think that was a
Ah,
time for everyone, right? To like
right.
take action or do different things that they weren't used to doing. So that's when I
Hmm.
really decided like, hey, I'm going to write this now. Felt
Okay.
like a good time to,
Okay.
I had more time at home. And so I started writing it then. But knowing that I wanted to like get it published, I only wrote a few chapters because for like pitching
Mm.
nonfiction work to publishers and agents, you only need a few, like a sample. So I just started, this is me, like typical procrastination at moments, where I just wrote enough to like be used as my sample that I'm going to start
Okay.
submitting. And so it kind of stayed as that and an outline for the rest of it for a while, like probably close to a year. And then when I got
Mm.
the bite, like I entered it into a writing contest in
Okay.
Canada, and I was one of the finalists. And then I
Mm.
wasn't one of the three finalists, and I wasn't the winner. But one of the people that was part of the running the contest, she decided she wanted to start her own publishing agency. And she said, I want to publish your book. And so I
Okay.
was like, well, that's
Very cool.
amazing. And then in my head, I'm
Yeah.
like, well, I better finish the darn book.
So for our listeners out there who might want to try the same thing that you did, can you tell us a little bit about what this contest was, or the name of it and so forth?
Yeah, it was called the Right Away contest, Right
Okay.
Away, and
Mm-hmm.
it was run by RE Books, who's my publisher now. So it's
Okay.
Rebecca Eckler. She's a Canadian author, and she
Mm-hmm.
did start, and I think it's running right now for it's a
Mm.
summer contest. So I think the deadline is like end of summer. So I think
Okay.
it's current for you aspiring authors or existing authors that have a book ready to go that they want to write about. Definitely
Okay.
try entering that
Is that
contest. Like,
just nonfiction or fiction too?
I think it's nonfiction. When I did it, it
Nonfiction.
was nonfiction.
Okay.
But she has published fiction books. So
Okay. Okay.
maybe it's
So
changed. I was part of one of the first, I guess, round of the
okay.
contest.
So and how did you find out about this? Did you just research it on online, or did you did you know some writers, or like how did you find out about all this kind of stuff?
For the contest, I just happened to be on her newsletter or a
Oh.
newsletter that referred to her newsletter saying she
Mm.
was running this contest. So I believe in the power of the universe. So I think for writers, aspiring writers, what's so good is to just, you know, do the things, or this is with anything in life, like the
Mm-hmm.
goals you have, the things you want to achieve, like put it out there, write it down. I'm a strong proponent of writing it down. I say this with money goals all the time. Write them down, because then you're putting it on paper. It's working with a different part of your brain, the subconscious or whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
Um and you're putting it out there, and then you're like allowing, the energy or forces of the universe, whatever you want to believe that is, to do their sort of magic. Like I think in
Mm.
some ways it's like allowing too. So it was, I put it out there. I knew I really wanted to write the book. Like, don't get me wrong, I submitted that book to publishers and agents, probably
Mm-hmm.
like hundreds of them, and got
Mm.
rejections from every single one of them.
Yeah, I was going
But
to ask you that because financial books, there's quite a few of them,
yeah,
right? So for you to stand out in a crowd, and that's pretty hard to do.
it is hard to do. I had to wear my pink boots like on the cover of my book, but I wasn't. You're right. So it's like the whole, don't give up at the first
Mm-hmm.
sign of like, oh, this isn't working. This is something that's always been inside of me internally, I think, from like a very young age, but I don't give up on anything. So if I have something I
Mm.
want to do, I'm going to do it. No one's going to stand in my way. Like I'm going to find a way through it, over it, under it. I'm getting it done. So that was my approach with this. I'm like, okay, no one likes it, rejection galore, whatever. Like,
Mm-hmm.
this is like a common theme you hear from every writer or author that happened. I mean, some of
Right.
them, get the they get it's easy and whatnot. Good for them. Like
Right.
fabulous. If it's an easy process, by all means, that would be the great way to go. But if it's hard or if it's not working, don't give up at the first sign or even the 10th sign or the 100th sign. Like,
Mm-hmm.
do keep going and putting it out there and saying it out loud, and something's going to happen. Like when I saw that contest, I literally in my head was like, I need to enter this because something is going to come out of this. And I
Mm.
knew it. So when we can like get into that, that
Mm-hmm.
just allowing or being open, you'll
Mm-hmm.
get like the things will happen, and you'll get the signs. I'm such a believer in that. Like how many times in life these like strong coincidence scenarios have happened for people. I think everyone has a story of that. So
Mm.
the same can be said on your like writing journey. Don't give up, because
Okay.
yeah, I think we can all relate. It's not an easy road, it's not an easy process, but like what
Mm-hmm.
good thing in life is, right?
Right. Yeah. Great advice. Now, I want to follow up on the because you mentioned COVID, and I've been talking to writers, over the past couple of years, during and after COVID. You started writing your book after COVID, so I don't know how that time period influenced you in any way, but as a financial advisor, I'm curious because of what happened with COVID, and which is like a generational, once in a generational occurrence, and maybe a little with what's going on in Ukraine. Like these are two events that had major impacts on the financial markets and people's finances. Did you take that into account into your book? Like, those things, did they change any of the specifics that you were going to initially write out? Or I guess because you started after COVID, maybe you had already made those adjustments, but you did have, I would think it was 15 years of financial experience with you when you were going to write the book. Has the
Yeah.
events of the last couple of years changed your methodology in any way about handling finances, or?
No, I don't think really. Like that's a good question. You're right. Like there's big events and they're going to
Mhm.
happen, and what we see with big events is like they happen and we don't know what they are.
Right.
Unless the psychics out there listening to this, they might have predicted them, but for the
Right.
most part we don't know they're going to happen, and then they do. And so it's like that with a lot of things, right? We can say
Hmm.
what's going on, what has happened. You can say the same with the financial crisis, Great Depression, like big events,
Right.
wars, like those are really unfortunate big events that have an impact. And yes, they are stressful, and they do cause a lot. Like I think more of that has to do with like the trauma of like the
Hmm.
lasting impacts on that.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
think again that's probably the beginning piece of my book, talking about the inner work, where you're
Okay.
going to get some more guidance on that, because it
Yeah.
might have made you feel like things are really uncertain.
Hmm.
Money can come and go too easily, and those are beliefs that you might have to adjust and change, because they're
Right.
probably not supporting you to have a positive relationship with money. So yes, these traumatic events leave a lasting impression on people and almost cause like
Hmm.
money trauma, is what you would probably call it, right? So you
Right.
have to do some of the inner work when you're finding, if you're really in fear still, or you don't like, you feel really uncertain about, if I ever retire, and will I be able to own a house? Like, is it even going to be possible for me? So you
Hmm.
still have to decide though that like I have to work through those beliefs to have a better positive outlook, to see things and turn it around of like money's not happening to me. I am
Hmm.
still in the driver's seat and I'm getting to make decisions. So
Okay.
that's one part of it. Yeah. And then I think another part, which I write about, is focusing on the things you can control.
Mm.
Because with money and life in general, there's always going to be things that come at you that are out of your control.
Okay.
And it can be overwhelming when it's with money. Like, you all of a sudden you get this bill comes in the mail, you get a parking ticket, a speeding ticket, or your roof starts leaking. Like,
Yep.
you can't plan those, so it's like it's not in your control. So focus on what you can control means, what can you do to help get yourself prepared for these situations, or
Right.
to feel good about your finances. So what you can control, like I said, writing down your goals and getting into those and exploring them and feeling good about like what you're working towards achieving. What can you control? Putting aside a certain amount of money for different goals. So you can say like, I have a retirement goal where I want to be able to retire early. Okay, I can make sure I'm putting away this much on my paycheck, or my employer matches a certain percentage, and I'm going to put the most in, so I get the employer
Hmm.
match, and that's going towards my retirement.
Okay.
Things like that. Like, what else can we control? I can't control the markets. They're going to go up, they're going to go down. I have no idea where they're going to go tomorrow, you might be thinking. And oh,
Hmm.
this person says it's going to go down and we're going to have a recession and it's going to be horrible, but this person says things should be okay. And like, if you're stuck in that, you're going to drive yourself crazy. Like, no, like money is like the number one source of stress. I see
Yeah.
why. So
Yeah.
what can we control? We can't control if there's going to be a recession or if the markets are going to go down or up. Like, to think that is in your control, you're thinking you're far more powerful than you are, unfortunately. So it is
Mm.
not. So you're like, okay, I can't control the markets, but what can I control? I can decide to put money in on an ongoing basis into the markets, because
Hmm.
sometimes it will be up, sometimes it will be down. So as I'm buying ongoing, maybe the 15th of the month when I get paid, I put $500 into my retirement account. It gets invested in the stock markets. My retirement time frame is about 20 years away. I'm invested in stocks, equities, whatever it is. They're going down. Oh, next month, well, look, they've moved up again. I don't care. I'm just adding it on the 15th. I don't care what the
Yep.
markets are doing because I can't control that. But I have
Right.
this retirement goal. It's 20 years away. I know investing is a great way to build wealth, but I don't know how to time the markets. I don't know when the markets are going to go up or down. So what can I do? I can just add to it ongoing and
Hmm.
take that out of the equation. So
Okay.
there's so many things we can do that are in our control that we can decide, yes, there's a lot of uncertainty in the world. And unfortunately, there's always going to be.
Right.
So if you look
Right.
at it that way and then say, I'm going to spend my energy and my focus on what I can control, that feels a lot better. It's a lot lighter.
Right. Yeah, I think that's a great approach. And it gets gets the reader's feet planted on the ground before they start looking at the whole package that they're going to be dealing with.
Yeah.
I wonder if you got everything into this book that you wanted to.
I think so right now, but it's just come out. So I feel like I'll
Right.
probably, from the feedback I get or things like that, I'll realize,
Mm,
oh, I could have put that in or I should have put that in.
right.
So that'll be great material for my next version or the expanded edition or something like that.
Okay. Right. Yeah, that's one of the nice things about those types of books is that you could write another book or you can just keep revising your
Yeah.
current book.
I
So,
try to write it in a perspective of being relatively timeless, like the
yes.
financial markets. Because if I start writing like, oh, your interest rate on your cash of 5% or something like that, well, if in a
Hmm.
year from now someone's reading it, they're like, I can't get 5% on my cash, then they just get all upset and it's a garbage
Yeah.
book, right? It doesn't have
Yeah.
relevance. So I try to make
Right.
it timeless and I try to make it North America focused. So I'm
Right.
Canadian, but I'm also a cross-border advisor. So I appreciate the differences of the two sides,
Hmm.
so Canada and US, and I appreciate how confusing it gets to readers if they're in
Right.
Canada reading a book that's written by a US financial professional. Sometimes it gets kind of lost because of the different types of accounts and things like that. So I write it with a perspective of North America because I understand and know the two
Right.
sides, that I try to make it for readers on both sides.
Okay. So your book is out as of yesterday, July
Yeah,
11th, and it's released by what was your publisher's name?
it's RE Books.
RE Books, and I assume it's available at all the usual outlets, Amazon, and so
Yeah,
forth.
online really easy. You can find it on
Right.
Amazon, Target, Barnes and Noble, and then in stores, it's in some of the chapter stores in my city so far, and they're saying that they're going to stock it. Indigo chapters across Canada. We should see
Cool.
more in there.
Wow,
So
nice.
that's going
That's
to
a nice
start
get.
happening too.
Yeah. Are
Yeah.
you planning to do any book tour appearances, things of
Yeah,
that
I'd
nature?
love to do book signings. So,
Hmm.
yes, my publicist is getting that set up so I can be out there. I love like signing books. I love giving people books. I love like giving early reader copies. I'm
Right.
like, I felt like
Right.
Santa Claus giving out books. I love it. So any way I can to like connect with people because I want to know, what people are thinking. What are they worried about? What do they want to learn about? What do they feel
Hmm.
good about? Like any opportunity to have conversations with people about money, I love. So I'd love to do the book signing, book tours so we can have these
Right.
conversations.
Okay, very good. I noticed that you also have another book out, and it's a fiction book, correct? Or is that
It's a
it's
kid's
upcoming?
book.
It's a kid's book. Yep. And
Yeah, a
is it
kid's
out or
picture book.
is it coming out yet?
It's coming out in September. So September
Okay.
19th, and it's called Money Wise Mabel's Bursting Bank. And it's a kid's picture book. So ideally between ages 4 to 7.
Okay, cool. And how did that come about for you? Because that's a bit of a departure.
Very.
That's your creative side coming out?
I love it. Yeah.
Yeah,
I have the creative side. It never gets any attention when I'm dealing with money.
right.
Um, yeah, so again, it was written from, again, my daughter was young at the time when I thought of the idea, and I thought about how do I want to teach her at her current age, like how can I
Mm,
teach her about money? Because the biggest complaint I hear from people is they wish they started earlier. That's, if I ask anyone their financial advice or whatnot, they constantly say to me like, I wish I would have started saving or investing sooner. So
right.
then I was like, interesting concept. Well, how soon can you
Hmm.
start? really like early, right? We can
Right.
talk to
Yeah.
kids about these concepts. And
Right.
by doing it early, we're setting them up for success, because it's just like, it's like math where the money concepts, they like build on each other. So if we can just
Mm,
start having very basic conversations with them about like, how much things cost and stuff. Like kids have no sense of that. You could ask them like,
right.
how much money do you think people make a year? And my daughter was like, $100. It's like,
Right.
okay. I'm like, we spent
Yeah.
more on our groceries last week. Try again. And she's like, oh, and like, so it's fun. It's fun to have these
Yeah.
conversations with kids, and it's teaching them. So this Money Wise Mabel book is just that. It's to open the conversation for you with your
Hmm.
young children about money. And
Right.
in the story, the little girl fills up her piggy bank, and she learns about not having to necessarily go spend it on, candy or like little junk type stuff, but that she can save it for something bigger and
Hmm.
have bigger goals, just like I
Right.
got to experience as a kid. And look how I turned out.
Very good.
I think pretty good.
Yeah.
So it's just,
Yeah.
it's that. It's just like kids are at a really interesting space. It's all about like the possibilities. And it's so
Hmm.
positive still at that stage that we can start talking to them about money, and maybe not like kind of give them those negative beliefs that like we're holding on from our childhood, or that we
Right.
passed on from us, from our parents' generation, with what they went through and things like that. Like we don't have
Hmm.
to pass along that financial negativity. We can start them off on a really clean slate, that it can be like positive and they can feel
Yeah.
good about money and their goals and what they want to do with their money.
Yeah. Very good. Yeah, because I'm a baby boomer, so I've gone through the transition from physical money to online, debit and credit cards. And in
Yeah.
a lot of ways, the value of money for me is so much more intangible now because I don't hold it very often anymore, right? I just have this little plastic card, and the days of going to the bank on your lunch hour and drawing out $50 for spending money or grocery money, those days are gone. So
Gone.
it's a lot harder to have a real sense of what exactly you've got behind you nowadays. And I think for kids, that's probably a good place to start, because it still
Yeah.
at times throws me off sometimes.
Yeah, you're right. Like losing that tangible element, you're so right. What is
Yeah,
that doing to us? Because I think we're in a state where we're spending more money than ever because it's so
yeah,
easy, right? And you're
exactly.
right, the
Yeah,
tangible piece of it, massive. So
yeah,
anything we
yeah,
can do to support our children, so we don't set them up where they're like massive debt the minute they're, in college or
yeah,
university or something like that. Anything we can do to set them up for success,
yes,
fabulous. Like the idea of saving up for something before you buy it. How
yeah.
many of us have
Yeah,
that
I remember
belief?
those lessons. Yeah, my parents making me, I'd have to go mow the lawn for the summer to get something. It was, but then you
Yeah.
appreciated it more now. Now it's like, here's my credit card, go charge it.
Yeah. I'll pay for it later.
Yeah,
And again, it's like the later, it's like you disconnect yourself when you're like, I'll
yeah,
just, I'll put it on credit.
yeah,
I'll put this on. You are that person. Like you're putting it off for your future self. So like,
yep,
let's not forget that you're the one still paying. It's not another person. It's not disconnected
right,
from you.
yeah. So you've done a fiction book and you've done a nonfiction book. Do you have any other writerly things in mind for the future beyond expanding or updating your current books, or
Yeah,
do you
like
have
I'd
do you
love
have the
to
writing
write.
bug?
Yeah, I love writing. I
Oh,
love
good,
books, so that's
good.
why. Writing's
Okay,
not easy to, it doesn't come easy to me. I actually find it really challenging, but I like challenges
right,
and I
yeah.
just love books. So, um I would love to write something more focused on like teens, so just like graduating,
Oh,
kind of like yeah, first getting out into the world with money, because I think make money your thing is good for young adults, but I
mm-hmm,
think just something even more focused on young people would be great. Again, we don't
mm-hmm.
learn a lot of this in like our high school or elementary. It's
No, we don't
still
learn anything.
financial literacy. Yeah, it's still a
Yeah,
bit lacking. So
yeah,
I'd love to, because it's like I have the kids, I have the adults. Now I want to
yep.
do a book for that in between stage.
So that's, yeah, you're thinking, because that's yeah, I don't think I've even seen a book about how for teenagers to
Yeah.
handle their money at all. So
Yeah.
that's a great idea. Good for you. Um, so I think that's all the questions I had. Is there anything that hasn't come up that you'd like to mention at this time?
No, I don't think so. I think we covered it all. I think it's just
Excellent.
now, like, I hope people are feeling inspired. I just, for everyone listening, I just want you to know and believe that, like, hey, what's, been your relationship thus far with money, it is what it is, but it can
Mhm.
change and you can decide what it is going forward. And
Cool.
it doesn't have to be scary, it doesn't have to be overwhelming. It can actually be easy, and it should
Mm.
be easy.
It
So
should be.
it should be. So when it's not feeling easy, when it's feeling
Yeah.
overcomplicated, like that's the time to just take a moment and reflect. And again, always
Right.
try to make it easy because it can absolutely be. And it can be just something, that you automate, that you have going in the background, that you get to enjoy life. Like this is not a
Mhm.
full-time job where you're like, oh my
Right.
gosh, now I've got to spend 5 hours a week focusing on my money and doing my budget and
Mhm.
this and that. And you're like, I don't have time for that. Like I hope I write this book in a way that's like you can have like enjoy your life.
Right.
Again, what I'm targeting is the whole money coming up is like people's number one source of stress right now.
Yep.
That to me, it's so preventative. Like
Mm.
we need to do something about that because that's really sad to hear.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, it is.
It does. So make money your thing.
Big one, your thing. All right. Well, Kalee, your book is out. Make money your thing, as you just said, and that's the cover with you on it, right? Is
Yeah.
that that's the final cover? Okay. So
Yeah.
if you want to know what Kalee looks like, go hunt up her book and you'll find out. And I wish you all the best with it. And thank you very much
Thank
for
you.
coming on.
Thank you so much for having me.
You're most welcome. Enjoy the rest of your day.
You as well. Thank
Okay.
you.
Take
Bye,
care.
everyone.
Bye-bye.